One of the fun, cool things that we get to do when we do these audio series, we get together in person and we get to have a lot of banter and just kind of brainstorming and brain dumping about different things. And one of the things that I heard you say, and I was actually just listening to you talk to one of our interns on a phone call, and you were talking about a term that I had heard, but I didn't really pay much attention to it until I heard it when you were sharing the context of the word. And the word, or the framework is, or the phrase is AI native. Okay. And I was like, oh, that's really cool because it describes what you need to aspire to be to win in this. And I was listening to the All-in-One podcast. Great podcast. Those guys have some pretty interesting takes on all this stuff, including, obviously, they're all tech guys, so they're talking about AI. And that term, AI native, came up, and how important it is to aspire to become that. So what does it mean to be AI native? Give me some context here so people that are listening can be like, oh, this is visually what I need to be looking at doing.
Yeah, so let me present a thesis again, if I could.
This is beautiful.
Right? And that gets to this concept of someone developing AI native traits. So the thesis is that fundamental change means that certain people will win, and then in fact there will be a 10 to 20% group of people in our industry who are really going to seize this and win. Okay, those are the ones who will have the mindset. They'll develop the right methods, ultimately master these capabilities, and I would describe those as being AI native. Okay, those individuals. And when the term AI native to me means before I do something, actually it's not even thought. It's like instinctual. I go to do something, I grab my favorite AI tool for that specific thing, and or I've already taught my favorite AI tool to do that thing, and my role is to simply ensure it's been done and it's been done right.
Yeah.
That's AI native. It's instinctive. It's not what tool am I supposed to use? It's just you naturally either grab it and use it, or it's automated in a way that it's doing it anyway.
You know how to assemble solutions, right? Because if you're in a context of, hey, I want to build something, solve a problem, whatever it is, you identify what the situation is. And you're like, okay, assemble this thing with this, put them together, and now I have a way to do this. Now, I'll give an example of watching you, Spencer, do some pretty AI native stuff. So yesterday, we were just tinkering, right? Mm-hmm. And you were using two LLMs and then a builder. And you had the LLMs talking back and forth to each other and then taking their combined output and copying it into a builder. And I was like, I've never seen anybody put the two make this one talk this way and then this one do this one and then make them agree on an architecture that you could then take and put over in this thing.
Yeah, and it's a insufficient solution, but there's no other better solution. It's basically so the task is we were building something. And one aspect of building that thing required, or there was a certain tool that was better for it, and then another aspect there was and then at the same time I have like my unifying large language model that now has years of knowledge on me, and so there's also certain things that I want to use it for in order to merge these two things together. Which, by the way, now I now have two computers. Sam seen my office. Now I have two computers.
Yeah, I go, what's this computer over here for? It's like, oh, well, I'm working on this one, and that one's working by itself. Are you serious?
Well, and I think many of the listeners might run into this. You do a deep research project, takes 3 to 5 minutes. At the same time, you don't want it to clog up your desktop space. Yeah. And sometimes if you're running a model locally, it's also going to take up memory. And so having a second right now, and these things will improve, but right now I find it worthwhile to have two different computers running.
Workstations.
Yeah, workstations. Yeah.
So that's like the advanced mode of
Well,
You
listen,
know,
Yeah.
I think maybe advanced, but honestly, once I saw him doing it, I'm like, oh, I could do that.
Yeah, well, it's being exposed and then seeing that, but you could even take it to like, I mean, I'm using words that are probably extreme, I guess, if we're saying super advanced and like archaic. It's not archaic, but like even understanding how to utilize what you're doing, the LLMs in the right way, right? Now that's basic, right? But that's not basic for a lot of people. Like doing deep research, and maybe you're getting this something you need to study and brush up on real quick for students out there, right? Well, you might not necessarily want to use, ChatGPT's deep research to help you study, but you do want it to aggregate the information using deep research, and then you can pull that into like a notebook LM. So that's a very basic form, I would say a rudimentary form of utilizing this, but becoming native is something that
it's fully understanding the strengths and weaknesses of this technology that is now your superpower. Like what's so cool about this is you all of a sudden have all of the latest. You're the super spy, and you have this lab that's creating these superpower suits and gadgets that you can use to 100x your capabilities. Like that is so real today. But the first step of that is understanding the strengths and weaknesses of the tools that are at your disposal. We have this AI and a.cre course, right? That we've been putting together for the last year or so. And every month we release a lesson, and we can get into why we release a lesson every month. The main reason being these things are changing so fast. This needs to be like a living course. But several months ago, we did this course on open source versus proprietary models. All right, and the purpose for the lesson was to understand like the difference between open source or proprietary. But the case study that we used was test 4 different models, 2 open source, 2 proprietary. I provided a matrix, speed, cost, and accuracy, and you rated each one of these. And choose the model that you use. And I had a very specific task, which the task was build an automated engine in order to do a pass-fail decision for like the pass-fail decision when an offering memorandum comes in. It's like, okay, so let's feed the offering memorandum to the model and then have it give a pass-fail decision, and then rate each one of those models. Why this is relevant is, okay, that's cool, but your job as someone who is AI native is to actually understand those and not have to go to someone else to find out which is the best model for the job. If you go to someone else, you're now just AI capable. All right? AI native means you are actually the one who's discovering that for yourself.
The other, it's interesting to like hear this and think about it. There are probably the open source, closed source, each of them had their own way of solving it, and some was sufficient, right? And then some ways, there was one way that was probably superior than the rest. I didn't go through the study with you, but it's akin to today. In my head, I got this, like, we were talking about superpowers, and you could think of like the most powerful superhero, or like in my mind I was thinking of, I don't know if you guys ever watched Rick and Morty, where like he creates this bot and all his purpose is to serve butter. It's like, you serve butter, he's like, oh my God. But you can, right now it's like humanity, and it's not understated. Humanity is at a moment where like we are capable, and it's all democratized. Like for the most part, we are capable to build ourselves and the extensions of ourselves into Superman. Or you can use the tool to serve butter at your table, right? But it is all there. And like, where do you go to figure that out? And because you keep saying this, and both you guys keep talking about the tinkerer and tinkering, and that's something I keep.
So you talked about a native or an LLM ChatGPT that you use, and then it knows you. One of the coolest things after you use it over time is saying, maybe you don't do a great prompt. You just do kind of like a half prompt. You do it, and then it puts out this amazing thing. You're like, well, how did it do that? Because it knows you.
Yes.
Yeah. Right? And by the way, you also said something that I totally agree with, by the way. You're like, well, there's potential. We were talking about the difference at that time this is, by the way, what month is this? This is June, the beginning of June 2025. This could be, depending on when you listen to this,
I know.
this could be different.
Oh, it will be different.
This will
Yeah,
be different.
this will be
But we
different.
were talking about Anthropic's model in terms of writing and ChatGPT's.
You know, Sam asked me, well, so he's just watching me. He's like, well, why don't you use Claude?
Yeah.
And what was my answer?
Your answer was totally right. It was because ChatGPT has my entire knowledge base, knows everything about me, and it's that.
I have a Claude license, a Claude Pro subscription, and an API with Claude, and we use Claude both at
We
CRE
were
agents
getting
for
really,
certain
really
models.
annoyed because they have M dashes and everything that writes. Like,
Well, that's
why?
ChatGPT. I know.
That's what I
ChatGPT
meant,
right
yeah.
now in June 2025, the ChatGPT loved. Well, GPT
the
4.0
dashes,
loves
yeah.
All the cool
loves
stuff.
the M dashes.
All
They're
the
so
cool stuff they
frustrating.
can do, and they can't get
Well,
rid of
that's how
that.
you can immediately tell if somebody's writing you with ChatGPT if you see that M dash.
But today, look, Sonnet 4, Claude 4, which is Sonnet 4 or Opus 4, are superior to really to any other model for certain exercises.
Yeah.
So, for instance, at CRE Agents, we just built this called an agent. It's like a capability that we have taught, like this digital coworker, and one of them is this mapping exercise where you map detailed line items to a chart of account, right? Kind of a common thing that we do in real estate. And we were hitting about an 80% success rate, meaning for every line that it would look at, it would be about 80% correct in its mapping, which is still great. I mean, it still saves a human enormous amount of time, not to mention all the data cleanup and stuff that it does. But as soon as we introduced or we replaced, I think we were using GPT 4.1 when we initially built the capability, Sonnet or a Claude 4 came out, and so we didn't want to use Opus, it's incredibly expensive, so we used Sonnet 4, increased it from 80% to 90%.
Just by changing the LLM.
Just by changing that. But
Yeah.
knowing, first off, having all of them as capabilities or be able to power the brain with whatever large language model, I think is really important. But just knowing what capabilities are out there, what are the strengths and weaknesses, then just make you better.
Yeah,
That's
and so
it's one aspect of having the trait of being AI native.
Yeah, and so the feature we're going back to is the benefit when you originally or initially start tinkering around with these things and playing with them. You're learning how to prompt, right? You're learning how to say it in a way to where you get a good output. Over time, you're going to get amazing outputs because your account is going to know about who you are, what you do. In fact, my wife thinks it's really weird, but I do this. When I'm driving in my car, I will put it on voice and I'll say, this is what I want you to know about whatever. And I will talk to it for 30, 40 minutes and just tell it stuff because I want it to know those things. And it doesn't even matter. Sometimes I'm like, man, I'm bouncing all over the place, you know?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It can create a customer profile. I do anything.
But this time last year, that was not possible. That's how
how
the
quick it's
context
moving.
windows of these LLMs have just like, that's what's so amazing about what's happening. Like you have a personal assistant that knows you intimately, arguably better than another human personal assistant because they, again, have that massive context window where you can sit there and talk to them. And I mean, anybody that's using it daily, whatever you're using, I've seen it's insane how it's adapting.
So I own a software company. And I want to kind of go back to this digital or this native concept and maybe tailor it back to commercial real estate. What I have seen, I've got software developers, and when AI got good, it started being able to really do really amazing things with code. And it didn't take very long. Now I can't write code. I'm not a coder. But even as the person who, I'm a founder in the company, I see what's happening. I started seeing a very quick divide between two things happening. One, the people who used AI, like my coding team, and two, who the artists were, and then who the regular developers were. And before, they kind of worked together as a team, and they did stuff. As soon as we started saying what they could do, I'm like, that person is an artist or is a craftsman in software. and this thing has now made it so they can commit this many lines of code every single day, that person is still like they're doing a fraction with the same tools, a fraction of the output. And that's because in code and coding, they're at different levels of skill and understanding. So one is more AI native because of their skill set and the tools. So how does that work in real estate? Right? When you have the person, like you have, the difference between the art and the science.
Yeah, you may not have an answer to this. Is there a defining characteristic or something about one versus the other that stood out? You might not have an answer. I'm just curious. Is something that stood out to you?
Nuance.
What do you mean by that? Elaborate.
There's builders and then there's building with a purpose.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I have, in the last 6 months, I have learned more about software because I've owned Upex for 4 or 5 years. And I do have partners that understand software, so I'm not like this negligent software company owner. But they understood it.
Make that software for me.
Yeah, exactly. But I couldn't visually see what we were building before and what got built after. 9-day difference. You just started seeing detail coming from the artists that made, it is so, the difference between awesome software and then software that's just built is detail and simplicity. There are people who understand it so well that they know what to remove and what to replace.
Yeah.
And there are people who just build everything and they clog it all up and they're like, well, you need this, you need that, you need this. And you look at the end product and you're like, how did that person come with such a more elegant outcome? And that one is, it seems almost Frankenstein.
I love that you said there's artists, because every medium that you use is a form of art.
It is nuanced though, but it's
there's no different. This is no different.
You like there's that phrase, like there's the lines, read between the lines. It's the ones that know what goes in the, like how to read between the lines that really makes.
Or know how to prompt, which is something we'll talk about maybe even in this episode.
So this whole idea of art is interesting. Let me ask a question. So there's been this rule of 10,000 that as long as I can remember, people have used to describe or
10,000 hours.
10,000 hours, yeah. The rule of 10,000 hours. You do anything for 10,000 hours, you become a master at Malcolm Gladwell and not Blink, but his whatever the other one was. And so we've heard that over and over again. Okay, 10,000 hours, you become a master. But what happens when AI can do the same thing on someone's behalf in 10 seconds? And you're going to take a little offense to this, but Michael spent his entire life, he's a master guitar player and musician. And, I can go on Suno and create a 4-minute song. It's not
like we did on our
like we did on our retreat the other day.
That. We're not talking about that.
We should release that to the audience.
So I created an AI song. I have no musical, I have some musical capability.
At my expense.
That Sam's expense. Totally, it was a lot of fun. And that's maybe not a great example, but that's a parallel to this, which is, okay, there's all of us who spent thousands, tens of thousands. We're well over 10,000 hours in financial modeling, and at some point we'll have an AI assistant that will be able to do most of that for us. So does mastery no longer matter?
I would say mastery will always matter, and that's a drive of humanity. Before we had the printing press and book writing was an art, right? Like creating books was an art, and that went away. People's just what they master will shift. And this is actually a part of the story that can be sad for some people, but also can recreate the opportunity, because there are people that spend 10,000 hours becoming artists, and they got a job not for the sake of their art, but to do things such as marketing or create or that type of creative stuff. That's an apparent one. I mean, that has taken job. I've seen it take somebody's job. I mean, it's just, there's not a need for that. So the 10,000 hours there, that creates sort of there's a piece of this that's like a sad legacy of that. But the 10,000 hours just shifts. If you have, it's a mindset. 10,000 hours will always matter. And you can look at it as like, I have my opportunity window to do 10,000 hours on a nascent technology. Spencer, you're the perfect use case. 10,000 hours. AI didn't just come out. You're like, ah, cool. I'm gonna go sit on the beach. You're like, oh, I have a new opportunity.
That's
for
a
another
good point.
10,000
Yeah.
hours.
So you're describing
So,
passions, right? And if the mundane, monotonous can be freed up and pushed to these technologies and allow us to spend those 10,000 hours on things that we genuinely enjoy.
well, it creates things that weren't previously mundane will just by nature become mundane, and then there's
That's
new
interesting.
So let me make sure I understand the question. So is the question that because AI in 10 seconds can achieve outputs that took the normal person 10,000 hours to acquire the skill to get, then is the 10,000 hours a necessity in the future? Is that what we're saying?
That's what we're saying, yeah.
So it's interesting. I have 2-3 competitors in my software. They don't have the background that me and my team have. And when this AI capability came out, 2 things happened. One of them just poof, they're gone. The other one started building, and they built the most complicated thing. We are taking their lunch at every corner because we have spent 10,000 hours plus, I mean, way more than that, doing this thing. And we're building something that creates the actual outcomes, where these guys are just building for the sake of building. And so I think it comes to, like, it's taste, it's nuance, it's the really what happens is art turns into scale. It's like art has generally been something that you can't scale. That's the problem, is the artist creates something, boom, that took them. I mean, have you ever seen some of these drawings that people do by pencil? There's this guy on social media that draws these things and they look like real in person. And, that's incredible. But imagine that capability if you were to inform an artificial intelligence on how to create outputs that an artist would do, but they're bespoke to that artist. That's the potential. You can scale art now.
But that's fun. But art isn't done for the purpose of scalability or profit or whatever it is. Art is done for joy. And so, like, so art and what we're talking about are kind of there's a nuance different here. I mean, we're talking about 10,000. What you're talking about is like the moats evolve, right? And so, like, if you're focusing on 10,000 hours on your subject matter expertise, that's always going to permeate, even if people have access to this, this other stuff. But art, to me, is like, and you see it in like the most basic music. Why is it that, and that's why there's like a nuance here. Maybe we're getting a little off track, but like, art is for joy, or like when you hear like a basic Bob Dylan song versus some of these guys that are coming like really complex. He spent 10,000 hours focusing on the message, kind of like you, right? Where these guys who come out and they're playing this insane, all their fingers on the guitar, it's cool, it's nice, they really, but it doesn't hit the soul the same way, And that's sort of like the art piece. But I think the point around like the 10,000 hours is like, what is it that you focus on now that we transition? I think effort significantly matters, And I think we're doing a lot of the talking, but it pertains to this subject matter. This is
does it truncate the 10,000 hours?
So this is my view on it, by the way. I think the 10,000 hours absolutely matters. And the point you're making, which is spot on, maybe you can produce something in 10 seconds, but the quality of what's produced in 10 seconds still differs from one output to the next. And the AI that is paired with a human who's truly a master is going to produce an output in that 10 seconds that far exceeds the person who didn't spend the 10,000 hours.
That's right.
To me, and coming back to this whole concept of AI native, our CTO at a.cre Agents, Gert, has this concept of an AI multiplier. And each one of us should ask ourselves, what's my AI multiplier? And so if this whole concept of I can do something in 10 seconds that used to take
what is my thing worth multiplying?
No, what is my AI multiplier?
Who am I, and what can I be? What can I be multiplied?
And so if I'm a master, and I can produce the highest quality output, but I can do it in 100 times the speed as I could before, I am now infinitely more valuable than I was before. And I can do so much more. I mean, that's now an efficiency gain, and we get to economics and the benefit of that to me and to society. But just at this level, I still think mastery matters, if not more, because there's going to be so much junk.
Yeah.
What's truly special is going to stand out.
Well, the AI chatbot we introduced to the accelerator, like that is a multiplier of Spencer and myself and Arturo and everybody that's helped us along the way. Like that's a perfect example of mine.
But talk about what went into it.
Yeah,
You're talking about years and years.
Oh yeah, thousands of hours. Yeah. Which other people can't replicate.
Yeah.
It's like, they can put a bot together, but it doesn't have that brain.
Mm.
And the only way to get the brain is they answer thousands of questions over years with industry experts who have combined 20 years experience in the business, or 40 years experience in the business.
I think one of the things that the listeners may not know, and this will tie into why this bot is so incredible, is...
And bot diminishes what it really is. We call it an AI tutor because it's much more than a bot, but yes.
My bad, I misspoke. I was actually going to give you props, but maybe now I won't. But no, I was just going to say, since 2019, every person who has come into the accelerator has had access to you guys to ask questions. And you guys have given incredible responses that have been logged for, is that 6 years?
7
years?
Yeah.
So 7 years.
Year. Yep.
So for 7 years, you have a knowledge base that until recently wasn't that useful. But now it has 7 years of people asking specific real estate financial modeling questions that is now able and curated via a, what did we call it, a tutor?
AI tutor.
An AI tutor.
Which, by the way, this you can do with any body of knowledge. Okay, so Sam gave me a great example a few months ago, which was your grandfather had journals?
Yeah, my grandpa wrote a journal for every decade of his life.
Really?
So Sam created a knowledge base, and he paired it using retrieval augmented generation with a large language model and gave it some system prompt to act somewhat like his grandfather. And a way of thinking about it, so it doesn't feel creepy, is it is like an advanced search to access his grandfather's writings, right? And I think that's really cool. I mean, what a great use case for artificial intelligence, and that demonstrates, call it an AI native mindset.
I was just going to say, if you look at the AI native, I mean, we had a journal. And I was like, okay, the journal's cool, but where was he in these different locations? He was in Hawaii at one point in time. He was in Idaho when the Teton Dam broke. Yeah. And so what I did was I took the journal and I uploaded it as a PDF, and I said, I want you to take the locations where he was located and create me a second knowledge base on the cultural things that were happening. So World War II, different things like that. What were the sentiments of the time, and inform the dialogues that I'm going to have with this, with this AI, and include those things with him, including his religious convictions, including all these different things and personalities that he expressed in words, but again, between the lines, what was going on contextually.
See, that's like prompt mastery, right? Like to have that, like intuition, basically, to be like, here's his journals, I want to learn about them. Well, what is the context around that? Like, you have to go to that next level. That's incredible. I mean, I want to talk to your grandfather, but like putting in the context of World War II, the location, that's. And
I gave it to my mom, and I said, what do you think? And after crying for a little bit, she was like, this sounds just like him.
Did you have was it just writing?
No, I don't have any audio. Yeah. It's just writing, but meaning the audio, or I'm sorry, the text that it would put out would sound like him.
Wow.
So
that's incredible.
I think AI native, if we were to summarize, there's the art and science of everything. Science is becoming a multiplication formula that you have not ever seen, ever. Yeah. And it will multiply the best artists. So if you're listening to this, and hopefully throughout this season, you're going to see, like, there's two opportunities, one of taking no action and then one of taking action. I'm on the glass half full of AI across the board. Increase productivity, increase everything. I think it will magnify, multiply every person who uses it. So hopefully you're seeing, becoming AI native as becoming native into the artificial intelligence that is available to you today. And depending on when you're listening to this, that will change. And then B, becoming the best version of who you are and what your role is so that your outputs become the best and your value proposition to your community becomes the best.
It's a good one.
Yeah,
All right.
that is awesome. Well, if we could end it here, I have one more because we're talking about how you prompted this thing, and there's this concept of just like a prompt engineer, right? And communication is the goal here now, which is critical, I think, now, and how you communicate with it so that you can get this result, right? And actually, I want to turn this over to you, Spencer, because there is this idea where there's probably a foundation of coding that's needed, but like prompting and like understanding that art and investing that time into that, like maybe some advice, guidance, or just internal thoughts about like this idea of like a prompt engineer and what it means and how that's something that didn't really exist.
Yeah. So first off, everyone now is a prompt engineer who uses a large language model, generative AI. Let's talk first about a software developer. Okay, what is a software developer? They write code. Why do they write code? Because they want a machine to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And a machine has a language. And that language is some coding language. Okay, and so in order to instruct a machine to do something, it had been necessary to to know how to speak this other language. Okay, that's code. And what this technology has unlocked is it makes anyone now capable of speaking to a machine and instructing it to do things using natural language. And so prompt engineering is effectively the same thing as software engineering. I know technically it's not, but effectively it's the same thing as software engineering. You now can instruct the machine to do something on your behalf, and that's pretty cool.
Without having to
know how to code. Yeah.
A new line. But the way you do, well, it's funny because you had mentioned before, now you can give like haphazard or not really fully baked prompts, and the better it knows you, the better it will spit out.
I mean, I was really good at prompting, give it a role, give it context, give it a task, ask any clarifying questions. This was pretty much my prompting sequence for a long time. And then after a while, I just started getting lazy. I'm like, hey, you know what I want? You talk to me and just do it. And I was like, oh, but I didn't have to do the whole thing. It knew. Yeah.
Do you guys remember? Do you remember in elementary school we did this exercise? I remember it where it was like, teach me how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And so like the teacher was at the front of the room. She's like, okay, and she had her loaf of bread in her bag and her plate and the knife and the peanut butter and the jelly. And she's like, all right, Jimmy, describe to me how to make this peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And like the first one's like, you put the peanut butter on the bread, and so like she'd scoop the peanut butter like maybe with her hands or like a knife and slap it on the top of the bread. And then, no, not like the kids would go crazy. And it was like the whole purpose of the exercise was teaching kids, and this was less important back then, but like
it's more important now.
Right? Like how do you prompt it? It's like, okay, first undo the zip tie around the bag. Put your hand inside the bag, pull out the bread, right? And when in the early days of even the LM stuff, like the more specific you were, the more important it was. I'm curious how that evolved.
It's still important, but Sam's right. The output is a function of the quality of the input, and the input is your prompt plus all the context it has. Okay, and so many of us don't realize that behind the scenes, there's a lot of context. Context are just words, but in essence, instructions. And if you're using a ChatGPT, there's going to be a proprietary system prompt that OpenAI has injected into it. If you have custom instructions, those are injected into that first prompt. If you have some memory, all of that is injected. And depending on what your prompt is, it might use retrieval augmented generation to go out and pull in additional resources, or if you put files, right? All that's into that prompt. And the output is still going to be a function of the quality of the input, the context that goes into the prompt. Sam's just describing now this idea that the more it knows you, the more it has context.
Yeah, a lot of the things that I'm talking about are, because that's my role. My role is advertising, business strategy. And so I have a knowledge base of conversations that are around that in some way, just over time. And so I kind of just go to the output I want.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, hey, I'm looking to do this, blah, 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 whatever.
It's funny. It's building, and because I'm having this experience too, because I utilize it for so much. It's building. It's one tool, but it's building a team of expertise, of subject matter experts within it. Like I was sharing with you guys my example of having, a funny subcontractor on our development project who came like months after the fact with like these unapproved change orders. And like I had to go deep with my legal GPT to just like kind of navigate that whole situation. But that context lives, on. And so it's weird. It's fascinating. I'm just kind of providing another anecdote to that. So
Let's wrap
be
that one
AI
up.
native.
Yeah.
That's the
right.
punchline, is become AI native. All right. Sounds good. See you on the next one.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Adventures in CRE audio series. For show notes and additional resources, head over to www.adventuresincre.com/audio series.